start. All right, so thanks for being here. I'm Marie Ridgway, and I've got Dustin from Your Dog's Best Friend in Minneapolis here as well. And we're going to be chatting about therapy dogs for public safety agencies. I am super excited to be doing this webinar today. It can certainly be conversational. We've got a few slides and certainly an outline of what we're going to cover, but we want to make sure to answer your questions as well, since you're probably considering implementing a therapy dog at your agency. So there are a few who have already done this. I know a number are in the works. And so there's a lot to be shared and learned today. So thank you to Dustin for being here. I love that he agreed to this idea. I used Your Dog's Best Friend when I got Charlie, one of our therapy dogs, trained in Canine Good Citizen, and then he passed and has that certification. I now have a second therapy dog, Callie, who's actually 3 years old. She's Charlie's older half sister. She was returned to the breeder, had been a service dog for someone, couldn't take care of Callie anymore, returned to the breeder, and then the breeder really wanted her to still have her job, and so somehow my shepherds have multiplied. But she's amazing, and I just walked in last week on Thursday, and she passed her Canine Good Citizen class for test. So she was already really well equipped for that. But some of the ways you can use a therapy dog at your agency would be, of course, support for the first responders on site. So if there's a handler, a primary one, maybe second and third as well, for when needed, but a handler who has the ability to be around and on site, and in charge of the dogs so that they can be a support for everybody between calls, during meetings, whatever that may be. That can be a huge benefit. They also can be used for community engagement, of course, and then generally developing your wellness program and culture. That's certainly why I got Charlie 2 years ago. I wanted to help reduce stigma towards mental health care. He's an icebreaker, he's a conversation piece, he's calming, he's fun, he's playful, he lives in the moment. And when it's good for our brains to be brought out of that future and past narrative thinking mode and into the present right now, a dog is a perfect way to do that. So it can provide a little bit of playfulness and recovery within a stressful day as a public safety employee. Another thing I'll just mention quickly is some dogs are being used for dual purpose, therapy dogs for officers or first responders, and then also on like within a mental health unit and potentially going out to calls where it's appropriate. That may not be the right fit for every dog or every agency, but I know that has been a piece specifically related to funding for some agencies that has allowed it to happen. So Dustin, I will let you talk about a lot of this, and I may ask questions or just have conversation, and please do jump in. You can send me questions you have through your chat option in Zoom here, and then we will definitely also leave questions for you at the end. So thank you, Dustin, for being here. I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Marie, for having me. So I'd just like to start by talking a little bit about Your Dog's Best Friend and our approach to understanding and training, because it is very different from what a lot of us as previous dog owners or potential dog owners have had or thought about when it comes to training. And that's that it's based on a relationship, much like how the dog parents would be raising their own kids, just like we raise our own kids to be polite, to be respectful, to listen to one another, instead of treating them like the greedy salesmen that want to only have reward based situations where it's sit, stay down, and I'll pay you for all these things. Well, that all has its time and place. It doesn't really land when it comes to certain dogs, especially when it comes to the therapy field, and especially if we're going to be having dogs going out to be first responders, or in that scenario, that's a very, very high stress situation, and not every dog is capable of buffering that mentally, because that's a lot of stress. So we think about how the handler's relationship with the dog is so important. So having someone that you can lean on and that you can really trust in an emotional high stakes situation, that's, you know, where we root ourselves, where it comes down to how you feel and how you, you know, interact with your dog in the day to day, not just, you know, when it comes to where their butt goes, you know, sit down here. So we take it back all the way to how they relate, how they ask for things from us. And it's, you know, it's very holistic. It's very, you know, natural for them because that's how they relate to each other. So, you know, I first started doing a lot of this training, you know, 4 years ago with studying dog behaviors at our doggy daycare, which is the sister company of Your Dog's Best Friend, where you can see, you know, all these natural relating, you know, skills being implemented day in and day out. So I guess when it comes to being able to be handling a dog like that, you want to be comfortable, you want to be confident and understand that, you know, I have the direction that my dog needs and we can work together. As far as dog breeds go in this, you know, situation, I've seen a number of dogs. It doesn't really lend itself to a specific breed necessarily. And if anybody has other questions about that, you know, we can definitely talk more about it. But I've seen, you know, tiny Shih Tzus being, you know, super emotionally supportive and having enough endurance to lead rooms and be able to take in other people, because I've also worked with, you know, some therapy groups where they're being more emotionally supportive. And, you know, as long as you have a strong mental fortitude within that dog, they can withstand a lot of different scenarios. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a specific breed. I know Marie has quite a few shepherds at home, but all dogs can be, you know, that emotional support if they have the right, you know, structure behind them. And,
Would you say that I had one person when I was talking with them about their program development for therapy dog, they had been told that a golden retriever is just like the easiest, best chance of having the right temperament for a dog. Would you say there's any truth to that?
I would say that there's more truth in the way that a golden retriever is going to be maybe more acceptable to the public eye. I feel that a lot of dogs can be easily trained. It does, again, come down to the personality of, you know, that individual, because some dogs, and a lot of them that I usually look for when it comes to either, you know, therapy work or emotional support animals, is more of the mom type, the dad type, the ones that are, you know, calm, cool, and collected when they walk into the room. And you can see that at a very young age with a lot of our puppies. And those are the ones that you would want to select. There are some golden retrievers where everything just kind of rolls off their shoulder, a lot like how, you know, how you talk about Charlie, where he's just, you know, happy-go-lucky, everything's fun, and he does his job when he needs to. Certainly a personality like that is a glowing example of what we would all want. But I think a lot of people just kind of latch on to the golden retrievers because they are a little more accessible, like labs. Because some people will look at a German Shepherd and say, you know, those, you know, types of breeds may, you know, be off-putting to other people, and golden retrievers, you know, just have a natural way about them that is usually inviting.
Mm-hmm. I was lucky that my breeder temperament tested at 5 weeks and allowed us to meet the dogs at 5 weeks, had already met the parents, knew their temperament. And then she had told us which 3 were service dog type. And then Charlie had the most confidence of the 3. So knowing I'd have him in groups and all over, I went with him. But do you help with puppy selection? Because lots of breeders don't do that kind of thing at all. I know that's pretty uncommon. I assume you help with that though, potentially?
Yeah, so usually when we go out into, you know, the puppies fields to, you know, go select them, either the person who is looking for a dog already has a breeder in mind, especially since most breeders, especially at this point, are booked out maybe a year or 2 litters or however they, you know, schedule people. So we usually come in at about the 5 to 7 week range, where a lot of our dogs are starting to be a little bit more social, a little bit more curious with other people. And, you know, we go in, we examine how they're relating with their peers, how do they greet people if the mom or the dad is present, dog parents if they're present, how do they interact with their puppies? Usually what I'm looking for when it comes to, finding a temperament with a puppy, whether it's for a therapy dog potential or service or a ESA dog, or even just a family dog, I always look for the one that has the most calm, relaxed demeanor, the last one to approach the fence when they're saying hello. And it's not in a, nervous way. It is very body confident, and you can see a little bit of this puppy swagger coming towards the fence, that they want to say hello, but they didn't have to be the first person there, because they have time to inspect the whole scenario, to look and say, who are these people? How do my parents feel about it? How are my siblings responding? And then how do I feel about it? So all those little things going on, a lot of people aren't thinking about at a puppy in 5 to 7 weeks. They just think there's this cute little puppy coming my way. So there is more going on, especially at a young age.
Mhm. Okay, good to know. Anything else you want to mention about temperament or the training specifically, or certification?
Yeah, so when it comes to our therapy dog training, as you know, a lot of it is based into, how many, can you do these specific tasks? Can you have supervised separation? And when I've looked into, and people that I've worked with that have talked about their therapy dog training is, you're going through real life scenarios. You're going into a hospital for your test and standing on this specific side, while you're checking in without distractions, not making any messes on the ground. And you really want to have a dog that can, excuse me, be calm and confident in a lot of those situations. And that's, I guess, the biggest thing that I would look for any of you if you're looking to get, a potential therapy dog, to move them into this line, is to make sure that we have a dog that is very, very calm, very, in tune with how the people are responding, instead of being reactive towards these new scenarios. A lot of the times when it comes to, getting these dogs, the cute, cuddly, super soft, sensitive ones can have their place. But again, we want a dog that can be very, very calm in these situations, because the, the scenario that they're going to be put into is, pretty challenging. So temperament, calm, cool, collected, certification, there are many, many different places that you can go, for that. And I believe we do have those on the handout, as far as agencies to move on to look at. But
Justin,
yes.
beyond the Canine Good Citizen training plus certification that can be done at Your Dog's Best Friend, which is what I did for both of mine. I know, so I have liability insurance through my private practice as a therapist that can just be rolled into our liability for an added fee. But I've heard a lot of the times when further certification with an organization happens, a lot of it is for the purpose of the liability insurance. A police agency may not need that. Is there still a good reason? I mean, they would still need liability insurance, but it's likely they wouldn't need the therapy dog organization to provide it. Is there another good reason, like further training or whatnot, that they might need through one of those organizations?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information
Okay.
For comment.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I've left it off too, because I didn't need the liability insurance. I didn't go with that. But I wanted to mention the handler piece. I know logistically, for a dog to have a single primary handler and maybe a backup or two makes a lot of sense. Would you say that's healthiest for the dog too, to know who their main person is? But if that person is going to need to be out of town, can't take the dog, they should have a backup handler. Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, so I like to make sure that, at least for my personal dogs, or for any other person's dogs, that they have at least, two people that they are comfortable with, especially when last minute situations. And if you can have someone that can handle your dog that isn't directly involved with your family, the better, just because family things can happen at any time. And you want to make sure that, if you have to go into work, or if your dog has to go, in your cases, wherever your dog may be needing to go, if the person is able to bring them to those places. An outside handler is also good. And especially, if we're thinking about youth, I would say younger or older teens is probably better for that situation.
Uh-oh.
Adults, but I've definitely seen, older kids being able to handle their dogs and handle dogs in, various situations and do just fine.
Okay. I am having some shaky internet connectivity, so I might need to switch over here, but we'll see. Anything you would mention as far as time commitment for that handler or for the agency overall? Any supplies beyond, I mean, it's not, I'm hearing that, squads or unmarked vehicles are being repurposed to hold the dog in the back if they are being used for community outreach or for just even the travel for it to safely travel. A crate at home and at work, and anything specific though you would mention as far as supplies or time commitment or ongoing training?
Yeah, so to touch on ongoing training, I would definitely consider, to have people consider continuing to, get their dog. You don't have to, but to go and do the Canine Good Citizen class again. Those little things are just kind of good tune-ups, or having a meetup with a private trainer to ensure that, the relationship and that is still, enduring everything that it's going through, and making sure that not only the dog, but ourselves, we're having those off times, those off days, to not have to work. And that goes along with time commitment. It's a full-time job. We want to make sure that they have plenty of downtime to rest and relax between work. And that would ensure making sure that when you go to a site with your dog, that they have their own place to decompress and calm down. Obviously, I'd imagine it would be in the back of the car with the doors, windows open, all that, just so that they can have downtime. The commitment, it's big. So I would make sure that you are, prepared for that, especially if you plan to be meeting a lot of people, going out into the community often, that you definitely take advantage of having some downtime where the dog doesn't have to worry about, being involved in working. Supplies, I would definitely make sure that you have lots of, dog beds, water bowls, cooling mats. But other than that, they're pretty happy wherever they go as long as they have their people that they love and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last thing I'll say on that is such a neat approach I learned at Your Dog's Best Friend, not like you said, the typical reward and punishment approach, which gets you compliance, but not connection. And so what I gained with Charlie is connection that I didn't know how to have previously. And so now I'm able to teach that to Callie. So she was partly trained in a reward punishment way and did actually a 8-week boarding and boot camp. So she's just like really on point, but she is now really building that. Her eye contact's fantastic. And then the feeding one piece at a time to help her get to know me, but having her connect with me before she's fed, and do those pieces that I can tell she wasn't taught before has really been helping ease her transition too. So I appreciate that method that I wouldn't have otherwise known. And for a therapy dog specifically, it seems so valuable because, they aren't the high drive canines that most agencies are so used to. This is such a different approach. So it's neat to know that.
Yeah, they're socially brilliant, just like, the best people that we know. And we want to continue to nurture that. So making sure you can, facilitate how they're feeling and being honest with yourself. If you go to work one day and it's just incredibly tough, naturally, Charlie's going to say, hey, I see these other people that could use help, but right now mom needs to feel good, because how we feel is the biggest conversation with our dog. So if you're not feeling well in that day or in those moments, we need to understand how that's going to impact, all of our dogs. But Enough about that. What else do we have here?
Yeah, anything you would be cautious about? This speaks as well to, I know of one agency who got a dog that sort of washed out of a service dog program because it was really overly food motivated, and they're really having trouble getting it to learn to go to others and read the room and do anything but just want a treat. And that, I think, is something that can be avoided, that predisposition with the approach you're talking about. But anything else you would talk about sort of being cautious about?
I would definitely be cautious of, I think what you're talking about right there is the biggest thing. Is when we get our dogs, the first thing that we teach them is to be compliant. And that is usually through means of food. And, we're no different in that approach, where we're using food or something that our dogs would truly value, that they would want to ask us for. But when we're talking about getting that connection, most of the dogs, they just go straight into performance, where they're going to sit, then they're going to kind of pace around the room. They're not sure how to stop and connect. So the dog parents, when they're raising their own, are going to use a little bit of a sound, a bark or a grumble, to let their kids to know, you have to stop, you have to listen, and then understand the why behind that. The why is so important, and the why is for safety. So the only reason the dog parent would ever bark, it's much like if you have kids at home, if they're, playing around by the street, you're going to get their attention. You're going to say, you need to stop and listen. So the biggest thing to be cautious about when we're raising our dogs for this sort of work, or really any dog, is to make sure that we have the ability to stop and connect, to have that relationship where they can say, okay, my parent said I need to stop and listen right now. Why? Because they care about safety. They're safety orientated instead of performance and transactional relations. So that's going to be the biggest thing that we want to focus on, is making sure that when we do come in for our mealtime, we're calm and relaxed. And it goes beyond just a body position. It is seeing the eyes and how does their face relate. When you're reading a dog's face, you'll look to the ear muscles. Are they calm and relaxed? Are their eyes soft and smiley? Do they have a nice relaxed jaw? All those are just social tools. They're socially aware of what's going on. They're reading and listening. They're in tune, instead of that hyper-focused look that we've all seen with dogs, where their ear muscles are perked forward, their jaws clamped shut, and they're dialed in. That is increasing depth perception and focus. And in obedience, general obedience, that's a great thing. But when it comes to being able to read the room, that tunnel vision isn't going to serve anybody. It's going to create more problems, where our dogs aren't going to be socially aware. They're going to be very dense and rigid, and only narrowly focused on, where is this treat coming from? And then if you don't have that, I'm on to the next thing. So for your handlers, for people that are raising their dogs, we want to make sure that we can, have them just stop and listen and tune in and calm down and be able to be doing nothing. That's the, biggest goal of our training, is to raise a puppy that can essentially do nothing, because the dog that can do nothing can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, for sure. Two quick things.
Mm-hmm.
Something I noticed between Charlie and Callie, now having two therapy dogs, Callie is much less sensitive to touch. Her paws, I can put mushers, what is it called? The stuff before we go out on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
Musher's Secret, I think. I can get it in between her paws and, all over. I can touch anywhere in her ears, and she just stands there perfectly patiently letting me, versus Charlie, who he'll allow it, but he'll kind of pull back a little bit. Just like little, even though they're both service dog temperaments, even within that is a range of their sensitivity to touch or whatever else, which I think just speaks to how incredibly important it is to start with the right dog, who's going to be the most likely to succeed at the job you're giving it. One-on-one work with you was fantastic. I could not have learned as much as I did just going to a class, so that's another option, specific to the dog and the handler. And then, unless there's anything else you want to mention, I wanted to open it up for questions here in our last 5 minutes or so.
No, I have not much to add here. This has been great, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Okay.
This is Dave from Hastings, please. I just want to make sure I'm on base here with my thought process, because I was thinking of actually being the handler myself as a deputy chief and absorbing the costs so the city doesn't have to absorb those costs. But how much is if you were to train a dog to be a service dog, I have no idea how much that would even cost outside the cost of the dog itself.
Yeah, outside of the cost of the dog, we usually like to put our dogs through, AKC Star Puppy. If the dog is, between 6 months and under a year. And that program is like a junior canine good citizen class. And through our program, through Your Dog's Best Friend, that class starts at $325, and that goes for 6 weeks. And during that class, you'll be going through the whole checklist of supervised separation. Can you start to touch the ears and paws, getting the dog ready for being in that field where people will be touching and feeling them, making sure that they feel comfortable, as well as giving you tips and tools on how to help kind of work through some of those behavioral issues if our dogs do start to bounce around or get restless on the leash, which is pretty common of our young puppies. But after that class, we do have our Canine Good Citizen, which is what Marie took through us with Charlie. Was Callie also through that program, or was that through a different agency?
She has only been trained through a different agency. She just did her certification test through you guys.
Okay, so we have our Canine Good Citizen test, which is, it's pretty standard for a lot of places. However, our approach and our understanding of how our dogs relate with us is the different piece. But that class, yes, is $375. And then afterwards, going into take a test, whether it's through Therapy Dogs International or any other sort of, agency that, certifies the therapy, those costs will vary from dog to dog or from agency to agency. But as far as that goes, those are the prices you'd be looking at for us. And if you were interested in doing one-on-one training, those costs can vary from trainers within our agency as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add too, separate from Your Dog's Best Friend, I know the 8-week boarding and boot camp that Callie did at 1 year old was about $5,800. And because I have shepherds and because there's liability and whatnot, I'm going to have Charlie do that same one because it's just created such an incredible reliability in their obedience and recall and everything. But it's going to depend on the breed and the dog and what exactly you're using it for and all those different things. So that it's just been an evolution for me figuring out what exactly is the right path. But I absolutely think this approach that obviously Your Dog's Best Friend teaches has been an incredible one too. So I think though, just know as well, there's more to learn about. There's an emotional support animal, which is like the lowest level of, not much, not even really a certification. There's a therapy dog certification. The Canine Good Citizen certification is the first step in that. It gives you that public access piece, if I'm correct, Justin.
Yes.
Okay, and then beyond that is service dog, and that's a whole nother level. Someplace like Soldiers 6 does that kind of thing for first responders and veterans, and that can be like $30,000 unless the program covers it. So then it's more like canine, police canine type cost and training and whatnot.
And for a lot of those places, to my knowledge, when it comes to service dogs, they are born and bred for that. That's not, to my knowledge, something that you can say, I picked up this dog and put them through this service program. I'm sure there's somebody out there that does that, but a lot of the dogs that I've worked with, because I do have some colleagues that have worked for Can Do Canines, for example, that the dog doesn't even go into the field until 2 years of experience and practice. But yeah, it just goes to show there are a lot of different ways to get there.
And for a service dog, an assistance dog, it's for one specific person and they have to have an actual disability. And then they get that special access on airplanes anywhere. They can't, there's nowhere that's off limits for them. So this is really this middle level of not just emotional support dog or peacock or llama or whatever that some people have, but therapy dog is kind of that middle option.
Hey, Dustin, can you
Yeah.
maybe touch on so like I was telling you earlier, like we're looking at maybe doing like two different things, right? It would be more of like a peer support dog inside the PD, and one would be actually going out on calls with us. Like, what path, I guess is what I'm asking, is like would be the most beneficial? Where are they actually riding in the car, or going to people's homes, depending on the situation, obviously. But what would you suggest, like which path to take with that dog?
Would that dog be coming to you at a young age from being a very young puppy, around 8 to 12 weeks, or is this already an adult dog?
This would be like it'd be probably my personal dog or whatever. So it'd be like under two, just shy of 2 years old.
Just shy of 2. Okay. So for that case, I would definitely start with a one-on-one to get, a bit of a personality assessment from someone like me who can understand that temperament a little bit more, to see how they feel with these situations and how your relationship with your dog is at a baseline. Because if you're going to be the primary handler, or if there's going to be someone else, a partner that's going in with you, that the two of you would want to be present so that you can both have the same sort of dynamic and relationship. So I would start perhaps with the one-on-one and then go into the Canine Good Citizen class right away, because you'll get a lot of the foundational tools that you'll need from a one-on-one with me. And then through the, the Canine Good Citizen class, that will give you, a little bit more access to the, next steps that you would need to take to get them, certified.
Is that like a once a week type of thing, or is it like every day, or how does that work?
Yeah, so for our group classes, that is every week for 6 weeks, meeting at our facility in Minneapolis. As far as one-on-one training goes, that's fairly flexible, and I usually try and give at least 2 to 3 weeks between sessions so that parents can practice what's going on, because life does get busy. But it's also a relationship that you're going to be working on building, reconstructing, because there are some things that we as people have done unintentionally when it comes to relating with our dogs that can have their vision of us and their perception of us slightly skewed. So we want to work, from the ground up. How do my dogs check in with me? How do they ask? Is it only because I have something to offer, or is it because I have true value? So I would definitely start with a one-on-one to assess that, to work on the foundational skills that we, give to a lot of our parents in our dog raising program. But the dog raising program is only for, puppies that are 12 weeks to 6 months.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions?
I just have one more.
Yeah.
So Dustin, on your website, it says it's $1,450 for the training package. Is that, and it says dog selection. That just means you assist in picking out the right dog. You don't actually find the dog, correct?
Correct.
All
A lot
right.
of people, and that is for the ESA program as well. And, I've had a lot of people that have used me just for dog selection purposes as well, be it family dog or whatever it may be. So you don't have to go through that whole process if you don't want to. But if you do need assistance with dog selection, go out to the breeder or whoever you're looking to get the dog from, and we examine the litter and spend about 2 hours if needed out there hanging out.
All right, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate your questions and for being here. I'm excited to hear about how your programs develop and get to see some of them too. I think there's been a lot of valuable information, of course, today, but there's so much more to learn. I've got a brochure that'll be emailed out to you if it hasn't been already, that Dustin created, that reviews a lot of what we talked about here, but gives you those some further resources as well. And then I know if you want to talk with those who have already implemented or at some stage of implementing it with an actual dog already chosen and starting to be integrated into an agency. Washington County Sheriff's Office and Woodbury would be two that you could check with to see what kind of lessons they've learned so far and whatnot. So I love that you all are doing this. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Dustin, for your time. I really appreciate it. And for
Thanks for having
everything
me.
you've done, yeah, to help with Charlie and soon Kelly too. So thank you so much. I will